Hey everybody, welcome to the stream. Just getting everything set up. There we go. Now you should actually be able to hear me. Alright, welcome to the stream. Getting everything set up. Gonna give everyone a couple minutes to get in and get settled down as usual. Getting everything set up. Gonna give everyone a couple minutes to get in and get settled down as usual. So today we're gonna actually discuss how to write a Salon LARP and how to run them. So do feel free to go ahead and drop your links in the chat or to a mod actually. And we'll go ahead and promote. So you can promote any LARP you want. That's fine. You just need to PM me or a moderator with the link. And we'll go ahead and allow that promotion. So again, we're going to give people a couple minutes to get settled in. And as that happens, again, feel free to do some promoting. Send me your links, and I'll go ahead and post them in the chat here. I'm going to get started with a couple of my favorites. And apparently you can watch Twitch through Discord. I didn't know that. It's pretty crazy. But yeah, wow. Who knew? I'm still learning all this stuff. Great, you're going to follow me. Yes, we have new follows. And those new follows were recorded by Nick, who is in the chat here. We did test them earlier. They look pretty good. So, anyways, thank you for joining us. We're doing a promotion right now to start off the stream, which will just go for like an hour or two tonight. It's not going to be too long. But I have written one awesome LARP. I like to think it's awesome. And it's called She's Got a Gun. And it's a small LARP. And it is a Salon LARP. So we're going to talk about what that means, how I wrote it, how I run it, and all the stuff that I learned during this process, and what kind of like help and support I needed from people with this process. Because I was surprised. I needed a team to help put together and run a very small LARP, and I didn't think that was going to be the case, but that happened. The voice and reaction of popping. I think if you unsubscribe and resubscribe, it doesn't count, but I did test it, and yeah, and it works. So hopefully we'll encourage some new followers to follow, and that will pop up in the stream. For those just joining us, my friend Nick in the chat here actually recorded some voice reactions for the notifications on my stream, because I'm in the process of redoing everything. So but greetings, role players. We do have about 4 people in here, and it is about time to get started, so we're gonna do that in just a second. Okay. Alright, so we're gonna talk about what are Salon LARPs and what makes them different from other live action role playing games, if anything. And of course, LARPs themselves are various. There's no one set genre or play style that permeates all LARPs. You know, it's just got some basic tenets. LARP is live action, so you're like acting out what you do. You're role playing, so you're embodying a character. It may or may not involve things like physical combat. It may or may not be a very theatrical style. So it definitely encompasses a lot, and so much that there's actually always some argument going on about, is this a LARP? Is this not a LARP? When we talk about different activities and hobbies that are LARP and LARP related. So how did I start wanting to make a Salon LARP? Because a Salon LARP is a self-contained, usually a short LARP that you could play like at home or at a convention. It's not a huge blockbuster game. It's nothing you have to go out in the woods and and fight people. It doesn't have to be a big thing. A Salon LARP is something you can play at home, and they're also called chamber LARPs. and parlor LARPs, although I've been told that the term parlor LARP is actually copyrighted, so I try to avoid using that term. But they're generally all used to describe the same stuff. And I started playing Salon LARPs at conventions. I started playing at Metatopia, Dreamation, and Gen Con, and decided, hey, I could handle writing like, a 3 or 4 hour LARP. I'll give that a try. I've written modules for larger games before, so I thought I'd kind of give that a try. At the same time, I started playing blockbuster LARPs. I went to the first run of New World Magiscola, and that changed how I thought about live action role playing. And since style and form are different things, a blockbuster LARP can be done in a certain style. You can still import that style to a smaller game, which is what I did. I was very inspired by the kind of play that I experienced there, and so I brought some of the things I liked about it over, as well as some things I liked about other games. So when I first started to come up with some concepts for Salon LARP, I wanted it to be 4 hours or less, which is pretty standard for that form. And I had some mechanics. I was like, I had some different topics I wanted to write about. And I'm like, I was still like too obsessed with the mechanics in my opinion, too obsessed with mechanics. Salon LARPs can have mechanics, but I was trying to write like a whole rule system for a 4-hour game. And when people show up at a convention, they don't want like a 2-hour workshop on how to play the game, a 30-minute debrief, and then you only get like an hour and a half to play the game. They want to know, what do I need to know to get started, and let's roll. So I kind of scrapped what I was working on and started all over. And when I was at Dreamation, I was going to bed after a night of LARPing, and I was thinking, man, what would I want to see in a game like this? And the idea came to me to create a LARP scenario. Hi, Cobalt. Thanks for joining us. To create a LARP scenario about a group of people in a survival situation where only one person has a gun. And so that person has a lot of power, and they determine stuff. They determine what happens since they have the power. And I decided to make this a feminist LARP. So the idea for this particular game is that somebody who feels marginalized in their everyday life receives basically like all of the power in the game. So I'm doing great today, Cobalt. Thanks for joining us. I'm doing really well. We're talking about live action role playing. We're talking about Salon LARPs, which are self-contained LARPs, usually 4 hours or less, played at home or at a convention. And I'm describing the one that I first wrote. So so that is kind of like how the genesis of my idea. And I was like, okay, well, how am I going to do this? So the next thing I did was I kept playing more Salon LARPs. I wanted to see what other people did. When I didn't have access to play them, I downloaded free resources. I looked at the Golden Cobra LARPs, which are it's a contest. It's actually in session now if you want to enter it. And when the contest is done, you get to see all of the entrants, and you can download them and play them for free. So I checked those out. I did a lot of research. I asked a lot of questions. And I asked Aaron Vanek a lot of questions. He's actually going to be co-presenting on this very topic with me at Gen Con in just a week. So, I really focused heavily on the research. And then, there's only so much research you really should do before you just sit down and start writing. And I kind of went from there. So I figured it out. And then I sat down and just kind of removed the barrier of imposter syndrome and worrying that I wasn't qualified to do this, and just wrote the kind of LARP that I wanted to play. I started with a concept. I wrote out kind of what I wanted to happen. I outlined it. And then, and this is the most important part of any LARP, then I went to the safety rules and the code of conduct. Because having a good idea is great, but if you don't set out those rules of safety, then the whole experience can go downhill for one or more players. So considering that my LARP concept dealt with a gun, people get triggered by that. They have, issues with violence. we want to be sensitive to that. You're playing at a convention, right? And you have a prop gun. You obviously have to put some safety guidelines in there for what kind of prop is allowed. So like something with like the orange tip, which represents, a toy, might work better for this than a more realistic looking prop like you would use in a military simulation, because obviously you don't want people in a hotel thinking that you're really running around with a gun. So you have to think about stuff like that and write that into your rules. But this particular LARP has a it's a feminist theme. The whole game isn't about feminism, but it revolves around empowering a specific person, so who was a woman. So you have to think about that when you're writing about safety. And of course, there's physical safety and emotional safety. So you want physical safety to make sure, especially if you have any kind of confrontations in your game, that people don't hurt each other physically, but emotionally too. If I'm in this game and I'm playing the character who is the woman with a gun, and I pull a gun out in any scenario, and your character decides that they react a certain way to it, there needs to be some rules in place for how you can and can't react. Can you say something, to me that is, reactionary? Of course you can. Can you call me hateful names? That would be against the rules. Without rules, how is anyone going to know that? You need to create those rules. So most of the rules for my games tend to focus on safety and the different safety mechanics that you can use to play a game like this. Because even in 4 hours, people will get very immersed and very, they're acting and living as their character. And you want to make sure we have the rules in place so that people can just kind of let go and do what they need to do in character. So, and I'll talk about how the playtesting and the first runs of the game actually went and how that happened for some people, which was really interesting. I wasn't fully expecting it for a 4-hour game, but I was pleasantly surprised. So, yeah, concept, and then those safety and code of conduct. So people need to kind of agree. They need to formally agree to participate in the game and follow the rules. This makes everyone feel safer and able to kind of do what they want to do. After that, I focused on the scenarios and the characters and the casting and the plot of the game. These are the essential elements of most games, whether it's a video game or a story, a role-playing game, a movie, whatever you're doing, the characters and the casting. So, focused on that. All the stuff that was in my head that I just needed to kind of get on the paper, put that out there. And the last phase of it was collaboration and execution. You wouldn't think you would need a team to create and run a 4-hour LARP. I needed a team. And the LARP has so many different moving parts that I needed to get extra feedback on it. So I'm actually going to show you the different parts of the game. It's still being revised. The final edition will be done before Gen Con because we're running it there, which is really great. It's sold out, which amazed me. But I have different elements here. So you're going to see this is a feedback form that I provide to all the players at the end of the game. And after I did the test runs, I collected feedback, and I'm using that feedback to actually make changes in the game. So I designed player feedback as part of the game. So the feedback form, it asks if the instructions are clear because, of course, we want all those safety instructions to be clear. I'm trying to get a sense of who is playing the game. Are they new to the game? I want to make sure they felt emotionally and physically safe. And I also want to make sure that the GMs didn't hover over the characters and push them into doing certain things, because sometimes GMs railroad the plot and they push players into doing certain things that they don't want to do, and then it makes the game less fun. I asked them about the pace of the game, what they liked and didn't like, and other areas of improvement, and I left the lines for communication open so that we can kind of get back to them. All right, and then so that feedback form was a pretty important thing. And then over in the organization file, okay. We're going to look at the components of the particular game. Okay, opening that now. My computer's being slow because I'm streaming and my computer's old. So you'll see we have some comments here that's of things that still need to be corrected in red. But we went ahead and popped everything into the document. Come on, game, don't freeze on me. Google Docs is hard. I like to use Word more than Google Docs because of this. Okay. So this is the full design document for the LARP, and this actually is what I hand to players. So at the top, I've got the logo and the title of the LARP. I have, and you'll still see some of the comments and stuff in here too, but I have a very concise introduction for what the game is. It's a 4-hour feminist live-action role-playing experience exploring power, marginalization, and survival. If this particular game were one specific genre, I'd include that too, but in this game we have different genres, and you'll see what I mean when I get to the scenarios. Then I have an introduction which goes on a little bit more about what the game is and how you play it. And these are the different components that you really need to include for any type of game, really, but you need to kind of make them up front and at the top for any sort of Salon LARP. So what materials you need, in this case it's a prop, some kind of ID tag, the kind of space that you need to play the game, pens and paper available for players, and the feedback forms which are included with this document. And of course a way to keep track of your time. So I put in notes for facilitators, which are just for the GMs to read. I talk about emotional safety, which we already discussed. Oh, it looks like I got a follower. Wow. Listen to that wonderful notification. The picture didn't come up on the screen. Oh, there he is. Hey there, Riker. Okay. So the picture that I have on my notifications is now, of course, Commander Riker. And the wonderful voice accompanying that is courtesy of Nick. Thank you. That is my new follower notification. I love it. So, anyways, so emotional safety, we kind of covered that already in this particular stream. But I make sure to include that and a way to kind of workshop that, to go over that with the players, because they need to know about that before they go into the game. And I consider that to be a critical component of writing a Salon LARP. So from there, we have the game safety mechanics, how people can opt out of actions. So, that way if, I'm just going to pick on Jess because I know she's in here. So if Jess and I are participating in this game and I decide I am going to, my character decides that she wants to shove Jess's character out of the cargo bay of a spaceship, which would probably kill her character. She does not have to accept that action. And so I set out rules for defining that and saying that these things are opt-in and opt-out within plot as well as without. Like what if I'd said something, in the game that was triggering to her. I have mechanics for her to be able to leave the space or to say, oh, that's not cool. Can we maybe negotiate this scene? Just like any role-playing game, when certain topics come up, you want to stop and negotiate them and talk about like what's going to happen with this scene. Specifically really violent stuff and really romantic stuff, so you know what the other person is comfortable with and you stay within the rules of the game. So that's kind of like what we go over here, and in this particular game I've made sure that there's space for people to go and actually go to the side and have like an out-of-game conversation with the GM, or because they need some kind of emotional support, because this game gets pretty intense. Oh, the voice did. I heard the voice. It was not your picture, Nick. That was, in fact, Riker. I heard the voice, though. Did everyone else hear the voice during the follow notification? Because I heard it right away in my headphones. I was like, hey. So it did work for me. I like the new name, by the way. Nick the Voice. Everyone's going to be like, where do I hire him? Okay, so I did that, and then I put in some rules, for the emotional safety, and I put in a workshop a way for the people to actually practice it before the game, so everyone feels comfortable. Because in this game, you have an allotted amount of time to actually workshop this stuff as a GM, so people know they're comfortable with this. I'm not just telling them what to do, I'm showing them. So that's an important element of a Salon LARP too. In this game, there are different scenarios, so I instruct them on how to choose a scenario and how to create a character. In the design document itself, I've used pictures. I'm not an artist, I'm not a graphic designer. I used some great public domain images. This game is about empowering women by giving a marginalized woman the use of a gun. So I went and found some really cool pictures, public domain images of badass women with guns, and from all over the world, and I put them throughout the document to kind of inspire the players as they read through it, and hopefully make them feel bolder about playing this game. So then we have character creation. That can be more involved, and sometimes players are precast into different character roles. For this particular game, it's a lot more informal. I just give them a list of archetypes and they select them. But some games do go into like pre-casting before conventions and everything like that. So that's another element you want to include. You want to tell people how they get cast as a character, how they pick their character. The next thing I've included, and this is not a mandatory thing for a Salon LARP, is suggested lines of play. And for those of you that do mostly written role-playing and haven't done live-action games, if you're just doing text-based RP or tabletop RP, you might not have seen this before, but it's pretty cool. And so if you're developing character relationships prior to the game, or you want to know some more out-of-game information about another character, what you can do as the GM is have everybody physically get into the center of the room, and then you can tell them to line up according to different scenarios or preferences of their character. And Jess will know what I'm talking about because I did this with our group at Dragon Thrones. Maybe some characters are aggressive and some are shy. So I would say if your character's aggressive, go on that side of the room. If they're shy, go on that side of the room. But then if they're in the middle, they can go anywhere they want. It's a scale. So you might be a leader or a follower, that kind of thing. And depending on what kind of scenario you're playing, that is important. If your players are playing characters that don't necessarily look like what they really look like in real life, you might want to say, if you're old, go over there. If you're young, go over here. Because you could always be a very young role player playing somebody who's really old, or vice versa. I'm actually thinking about our Star Trek role-playing group, and if we were all physically in the same space and we lined up according to age of our characters, there are definitely some people that would end up on the old end of things. Nick, I'm totally talking about your character. They would end up on the old end of things, even though they as people don't look old, just because they're playing characters whose Star Trek races are like super old. I play a half Vulcan, so her real age is probably about like 50. My real age is 36, so I hopefully look younger than she does. Or at least younger than a human 50. So you can do that and do the lines of play there. And then from there you can develop character relationships however you wish to do. That's a different component as well. This particular game, as many Salon LARPs, it has a playtime of 4 hours or less and a max of 15 participants, because most of these games are pretty small, right? So I kept the character relationship workshop element really small, really short, because there's not really a need to do this whole big formal workshopping thing with it when you have a limited number of people and the GM can just kind of go around. So the next thing is Jane Stands Up. So in this particular game, this is when the players select a key character of the game, which is Jane, which is the woman who in the game gets the gun. This is also something to think about in precasting. If you're precasting your game and you have a crucial critical character role that needs to be played and you want to minimize your GM involvement, then you need to think about that during precasting for a Salon LARP. So, so I've outlined that here and talked about how the group should select that particular pivotal character. If you have other elements of your game that you want people to consider, you don't have to force them to consider it, right? But you can kind of throw that out there for discussion. And in She's Got a Gun, I posit that the gun itself, the prop, is a character in the game. So if you're playing like a spaceship scenario, your spaceship might be a game. When I played Dragon Thrones in a location that was basically a castle, the setting was pretty much a character. Like, the Citadel of Mirrors had a huge impact on how we did everything. And so I thought of that Citadel as a character itself that influenced the rest of us. And, that the mirrors could reflect and change and move us to do certain things. So think about those other elements and encourage them to discuss it. Think about it like you would discuss a book. I mean, I know when you're writing a LARP, sometimes it seems like I always get imposter syndrome when I'm writing these things, and I'm like, this isn't like a piece of masterful literature where people are going to sit down and have a long conversation about, well, was this element of the story a character? But, take yourself seriously and take your story seriously, because if you provide that context for them to think that way, then it might actually come through. So in my game, I've asked them to consider the gun as a character and also to really think about the gravity of what it means to have a gun in a scenario when no other person does. So from here, I've outlined the structure of the game so they know what to expect. You want to give them some expectations so they can pace their own play. And they basically know what to expect. And the more they know what to expect, the more comfortable they're going to be. And actually more open to people being, doing things that maybe go outside their comfort zone a little bit as they explore themselves through LARP. Any other props or things that they need to do, I've outlined here that somebody should be keeping track of time. And then I let them know that there is going to be a structured debriefing. So after all of this goes on, we sit down and talk about it. And I set the expectation that that's a mandatory part of play, because we don't want people going off into the world feeling slighted by other people. Oh, they called me a name in game, so they hate me in real life, or vice versa. We don't want any of that if we can avoid it. So a structured debriefing kind of helps with that process. And we'll go more into that later, but this is just the outline of their expectations. I have a special thanks component to this game. All of the amazing people who gave me input and helped me put it together, helped me promote it, did the logo because I can't art, stuff like that. And I told them where to go. Also, if you're doing LARPs semi-professionally or as a brand, or you just want to stay in touch with people, I let them know where they can go. They can go to the Geek Initiative's website to look at LARPs and learn more about them. Then I have a piece about me. I do have one picture of me with a gun, with a prop gun, so that's me, guys. I went ahead and used that picture. And I put a little bit of info about that because I'm trying to do this professionally and wanted some feedback on that. So that's the first part there. Come on, game. There we go. Alright, so that's like the overview document. That's the whole thing. And that's what I hand to players. That's the big first piece of what I hand to players. So we've covered what's in there. If you guys have any questions at any time, just go ahead and pop those questions in the side. And we're going to go on to the next thing. The scenario sheet. So in that big document, I said, okay, players, the GM will have you pick a scenario. And most LARPs will actually have the scenario as part of the game. Like if you play a game like Dragon Thrones, you know your setting is going to be medieval fantasy, and that there might be some backstabbery in combat, and you know to show up and dress a certain way. If you played a night mission of Dragon Thrones, which is just a self-enclosed module within the game where people can narratively do certain things, but you wanted to show up in character, you would pretty much know how to dress, right? You would know that you're still in this medieval fantasy world, and that's the expectation for your costuming. Great. But in this game, that's not so, because the players actually get to pick their different scenarios. And this is kind of the thing that makes my game different than a lot of other games. You always want to have that element in your Salon LARP, right? You always want to have that that thing of, you know, what makes it different than what other people are doing. And this wasn't an original part of the game, but I was deciding on where to set it and realized there are so many awesome possible settings if my criteria are just any setting in which a woman could have a gun. And it was really empowering, actually, to make that realization. And that was a big part of the development process, which for a feminist game is extremely important. So I went ahead and wrote out the scenarios and just gave a very brief instruction to tell people how to give some guidelines on how to pick them and what they should think about. So the different scenarios that I picked, and I'm just going to run through them really fast since this is very game specific and not, you know, necessarily specific to writing Salon LARPs, is I have a sci-fi and post-apocalyptic scenario. I have 3 scenarios in that genre. I have a contemporary or any era setting, which is a plane crash. And then I have historical scenarios, including a collapsing factory, Easter Rising, 1916 Ireland, Queen Mbambe's Final Stand, which is an African scenario, and the French Resistance in World War II. And I tried to pick scenarios that I personally found really compelling and inspiring about individuality and the rights of the people involved. So I picked some near and dear to my heart. We played out the Easter Rising scenario, and it was just fantastic. And having other people in there with a historical background on that topic just made it come alive. And that was able to happen because I gave them this scenario sheet and said, what speaks to you? And one of the stronger role players said, you know, I have a connection with this event and I'd like to play it. And my heart just kind of melted because I was like, I've always wanted to play this scenario because it means a lot to me too. So playing out the Easter Rising scenario was really cool. So that is like another major component of it. If you have materials to distribute, you would want to include that as well. In this particular game, I did set up some name tags. So I'll show you what those look like. They're not final. I'm not a designer. I'm not good at layout or anything like that. And this goes into why I have a team. But I did pretty much put the information that I want on the name tags there and submitted this as a mock-up. And then these are going to come back to me fully designed so that people can wear some name tags. So in this particular game, I'm looking for a character name, the profession of the character, because that's one thing that carries through each of the scenarios that I created. You know, everybody has some kind of job or role, and the pronouns, so what we prefer to call you. This is so that we don't misgender players, but it's also because some people find it really empowering to play a character of another gender. And when we playtested this game, my friend Michelle, who helped me do a lot of the organization, she decided she wanted to play a male character just to see if she felt any different with how she carried herself. And I was really interested in that too, because I've only played female characters, but I do play a wizard cop character who's really tough. And I'm always wondering, would it be different if this character was a guy? So Michelle kind of like explored that topic by playing a male police officer in the game. And having the gender conversation and a discussion about pronouns in the game allowed us to think about things like that. So having those resources is really important. So as you can tell, I mean, I'm opening multiple spreadsheets here as I'm going through describing how I created this game. And this is the feedback form, which we already saw. You know, you can see that it balloons, even though it's a 4-hour game, it ballooned from one concept into a whole scenario sheet. I've got spreadsheets, I've got all sorts of things, and it grows and grows and grows. So one thing I really learned about writing, organizing, designing, and executing a Salon LARP is that it's my LARP, but it's not a one-person thing. The game requires 2 GMs. I have to train the GM before we run the game. You know, we had to play test it. I was living in a studio apartment at the time. I didn't have anywhere to play test it. So my friend Sharon was like, you could just use my house. I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't have that kind offer from her. So you got to think about these things as you're designing and rolling through. We also have, let's see, what is this here? We have a professions handout, which is just a suggested list of professions that people might want to select for their character. We found that professions were something that existed throughout every scenario, so people could use them. Now, some of them, obviously, you can't be, a marketer maybe in like a medieval scenario, or maybe it wouldn't make sense to be a jockey or a college student in certain scenarios, but the options are there for the different scenarios, so that kind of generates some information. I'm just going to close out of that too. Okay, so that's what She's Got a Gun looks like. The graphic design was done by somebody else for the initial image, and when the final PDF is done, I don't art. That's not going to be me. I'm going to have to send that out to a friend to do it. So that brings us to another point. Writing a Salon LARP and executing it at a convention. How much does it cost? If I were to pay everyone who helped me, I mean, I paid the designer like $5 for some easy graphic design work. But if I were to pay everyone who helped me, it would have cost like over $1,000 to produce a 30-page document. And I'm not even done. So what I do is I barter resources. So when one of the other people who has helped me decides that they want to create their own LARP or do something, I try to help them out too. You know, it's a community, you help each other. Printing materials. When I went up to Metatopia to playtest this, I was short on cash, and I spent like $60 at Staples just printing this stuff out. It's expensive. And that was just a draft, because I used the feedback to revise. Now I'm going to Gen Con, short on cash again, because who isn't right before a convention, and I got to print out all the materials. Now at Gen Con, you as a GM are actually allowed to charge for people to come to your game. So what I've charged for the game will actually cover the cost of materials this time, which is really nice. But that isn't always the case, especially not with smaller conventions or conventions that don't cost as much to attend. That's a big deal. So that's most of what I have for that particular LARP. And I wanted to describe the playtesting. I didn't have anywhere to playtest it. And I was sticking to a schedule because I knew I wanted this to be something I could run at Gen Con this year. So my goal was Gen Con 2017, and I didn't have enough double exposure events, which are the smaller events up in North Jersey, to run everything before Gen Con. I was like, what am I going to do? So Sharon offered to let me use her house. We ran a test run. Actually, I don't know if Logan's in here. Sometimes he comes into LARP Chat Live. But my friend Logan was actually his first LARP, and he really liked it enough to come out to an event. He liked it enough to eventually come to New World Magiscola. So just by writing a 4-hour game, I got somebody actively involved in the community, and he's a really great person and a really good resource and very helpful to other people in the community as well as he learns. So, that's the impact one small game can have. I was told, I got some good reviews of the game. My friend Erin played this game. I tried to make it very accessible. She is in a wheelchair, and she had a really positive experience playing the game. So that made me really happy. She was actually the character who had the gun in the game. Excuse me. So that made me really happy. The last handout here, this is the archetype handout. I didn't want to tell people just to pick whatever. So they have a job, and they also have an archetype. You need to give them something to go on if you're telling them to make their own character, even if you don't have a lot of mechanics in your game, which this game doesn't. So these are different archetypes people can have. So Michelle actually put together a lot of these, and she did a great job. And I haven't even reviewed all of them yet. But, an example is like the Saboteur, the Paladin, the Parent. These are all different roles you play in real life that you could bring to a character or try something different. I love playing the Liberator character, by the way. That's one of my favorite archetypes. The character I'm currently playing in our Star Trek game used to be a member of the Maquis, and she certainly fits the liberator archetype, at least in her past. And I'm fascinated with that archetype. So so that's what I have for She's Got a Gun, and that's how I have it laid out. If you have any questions about this game, let me know. Part of my tasks this week is to put all of this together and get it ready to go for Gen Con, because I'm running this game there. Very, very excited about getting to run it at Gen Con. It's a big deal. Gen Con's huge. Okay, so what I'm going to show you next is another game I have in progress. Although this particular game is, it turned out to be really big. It's going to be a blockbuster LARP. But I'm doing something a little bit different here. I'm designing this transparently so that people can give feedback as I go. Yeah, going to convention without being broke is not a convention experience. It's true. It's so true. Last year, I was not broke when I went to Gen Con. It was the first time I met Matt in person. We had a wonderful time, but we went shopping on the convention floor, and I found this. Let me see if I can find the jacket. I keep forgetting the name of the designer. I'll see if I can find it. The picture of me, you guys have all seen the picture of me. It's in my profile picture here on Twitch. Me wearing that jacket, the George Washington jacket. I can't find the link, but I found that coat on a hanger at the convention among various other things, and I saw it and I was like, I'm in love with that coat. And Matt was like, do I need to be jealous of the coat? And I'm like, maybe. I fell in love with the coat. It was $300. I've never spent that much money on a single article of clothing in my life. Not even a full LARP dress. Like, this was a big purchase. But I was like, hey, I'm working on a LARP about the American Revolution. I'm working on I'm playing Minerva, my character from New World Magiscola. Her house colors are blue and white. She's very military oriented. And it's just a badass coat. And I did it. I don't regret it. No regrets on that expenditure. But if you're not broke going to a convention, you will be by the time you leave. That's my experience. This year, I am not buying a $300 coat. I am broke as a joke, but I am there to run my games, make some great connections, and hopefully pick up some more work too. So that's helpful. This one, let me check, see if that's the right one. My computer is a little slow because that's the one. That's the jacket. Yes. I think it's called Volante Designs is where, and I sent them my pictures, and I'm not a model, right? Like, I'm overweight, I'm really short, whatever. But I sent them these professional pictures from the LARP, and they were like, can we post it? So it's like they post all these pictures of these, like, gorgeous looking people, and then they post, like, me wearing their coat. But my character looks really cool, so that's kind of fun. Cobalt, I did get your message. As soon as I'm done streaming, I will check that out for you. And if I have any more suggestions, I'll let you know. Thanks for getting my feedback on it. Cobalt's looking to apply to join our Star Trek role-playing game. So I was kind of helping him out with it before he submitted it. The guy that runs the game is like super busy and is redesigning the entire site and just does such a great job. So since I do things like this, character development, LARP development, I'm trying to kind of step in and help out. Yeah, that's the coat. Thank you. It was really expensive, but it's really good coat, and I've used it for a lot of different stuff. So, yeah. So, this game is called Independence, or Intrigue and Independence, and it is a LARP about the American Revolution. Right there, I can tell you just from the subject matter, it is a very difficult thing. And that's because it's a problematic era in history. So if you're making any game in history as a Salon LARP designer, and again, this isn't a Salon LARP, but some of the concepts I'm going to talk about are definitely relevant, you got to think about this stuff. So what is problematic about writing a game in the American Revolution era? Well, you have two sides that hate each other. So I'm setting up conflict and opposition. So if you're playing a British character and I'm playing a continental character, American character, we need to put some safety limits there on what kind of conflict we're going to have and the kinds of names I'm going to call you. Especially if in real life you're British and in real life I'm American. It's easy to get offended. Secondly, this was an era that included slavery. This is an era where women were not treated kindly. This is an era where Native people were completely taken advantage of, and their land was stolen. These are not pleasant things. We don't want to ignore that they happened, but we also don't want to actively play them out as part of this LARP. That's not going to make people feel welcome. Like, if I saw American Revolution LARP as a gamer, I would think, man, I love, colonial history in America. It means a lot to me because I live in Philadelphia and it was like the epicenter of all this activity. But, if I play a woman in that game, am I even going to be able to do anything? Number one question that, I've been asked since saying I'm writing a LARP about the American Revolution is, okay, well, I'm not like a rich white guy. How can I play this game? So instead of starting from the concept of the LARP this time, I began immediately with that code of conduct and thought about how that concern was going to impact the game because I do want it to be historical. So there's a point in the game where, as the GM, I might send in an NPC or play an NPC to be General Lafayette from France, who comes in and talks to the Americans, and that's a make it or break it moment. If they can't convince France to help them, they're not going to win a war against the British Empire. So, thinking about all this stuff, like, cool, I want to reflect history and give them the opportunity to make the same choices or to change them or to fail and see how it turned out. But I really want it based on history. So you need to really kind of decide what you need to keep accurate and what you need to change. And that, starting from there, was a lot easier. The other thing I did was I looked at more source material. My research for this game wasn't playing other games. My research for this game was actually reading a lot about the American Revolution and just kind of experiencing my city and just kind of falling in love with Philadelphia again and all the things that happened here. So my research phase for this game was different. And again, this is not a Salon LARP, but the design process could have been. It started as a Salon LARP, but it quickly grew into a 4-day event. So you'll see what I have so far. And again, I'm doing this LARP design entirely transparently, so people can give me feedback as I'm going. And if you do have feedback, just let me know. So the very first thing I say, I have my summary, just like I did in the Salon LARP. Intrigue and Independence, an American Revolution LARP, explores the overt and covert frameworks of America's fight for independence. Choose espionage, leadership, or civilian duties to bring about or prevent nationhood as you navigate interpersonal relationships, moral conflicts, and international ties. Negotiate with France or advocate for freedom and nationhood. The course of history is up to you. So I'm presenting them with the choice. And I also say this is a character plot-driven live-action role-playing game. So they know to expect not a reenactment of a battle between Great Britain and the Continental Army of the United States, but they know to expect a theater-style game. Then I launch immediately into the code of conduct, and this is going to be the most exhausting part of the entire game because people are very concerned in the LARP community about a white person running this LARP. So what I've done is I've actually, again, gotten my team together, right? I'm starting with my team building and getting other perspectives on how to do this. In this game, and this would have stayed true even if this was still a Salon LARP, I went into detail about why this is particularly problematic. And basically said, like, hey, listen, I hear your concerns, and we're going to go through this together, and I understand if you don't even feel comfortable playing my game. And the TLDR of all of this is think more Hamilton, less 1776. That's what we're going for here. So we want to represent history, but we want everyone to feel comfortable playing whatever kind of role they need, and maybe even feeling empowered by that. And then I go into the safety rules, which I haven't fleshed out yet, but it's got a lot of those other things. And I really had to go into detail here, and you'll find that depending on the topic, you'll have to do that as well. So when I get into gameplay for this, again, I went with a profession-based thing. I chose not to use historical figures because of the problematic nature of things, but that actually also freed me up to do more. So a figure like Benjamin Franklin, he was noted for so many things: his diplomacy, his inventions, his philosophy. He held so many different roles. His knowledge of farming, even. He was a publisher. He opened a post office and a library, right? I thought about all the different things that he did just within the context of Ben Franklin in Philadelphia, which is where the game takes place, and that generated like 8 roles. I didn't want to make somebody, obvious. You got to think about that too when you're designing LARPs. If somebody knows that you're playing the Benedict Arnold character 10 minutes into the game, then, and they figure that out in game, then they're going to use that information in game, and it's going to reveal a lot sooner than it happens. So you need to kind of think about the timing and the pace in the character development phase. So that's kind of like a peek of what I'm working on with this particular LARP. It's going to be a lot bigger. This is not a Salon LARP. This is a huge 4-day event. But it does require a lot of documentation. 2 separate codes of conduct. One of them is like a pledge. It's serious business. So that's what I have for that LARP design. I've designed the playtest, or I've described the playtesting phase to you. So I did an initial playtest at a friend's house for my Salon LARP, and then after that, I started playtesting at small conventions. And I had my first actual run at a convention, and now the second official run of the game is going to be at Gen Con. So all of my documentation needs to be polished by the time I head out on Tuesday, which it will be, and we will play there. And then the final stage in this for me is going to be to publish She's Got a Gun as a downloadable live-action role-playing game. I'm going to have this on my website, and people are going to be able to download it, and it'll be a pay-what-you-wish thing. So they can just pay like, $1 or more and have this game, and that money will go back into the time it takes for me to develop games and bring other creatives on board to help with things. So that is the process of designing a Salon LARP from my perspective, how I've seen it. This presentation will be a little bit different when I'm at Gen Con presenting with Aaron, who has decades of experience in running LARPs. This was my first one. This was my first solo design, and even that took a team. So every experience is going to be different. Other people are going to have different things to say about it, but that's how I did it. I started with a concept. I realized the importance of those safety mechanics, and I went from there. So if you have any questions, let me know. I've been talking for an hour about how to design LARPs, and I'd rather not talk at you. Like, if you have anything you want to know, or any kind of LARPs that you're working on. I know a couple people in here design their own game worlds, whether it's LARP or otherwise. I'd be happy to answer those questions. So I am going to Gen Con on Tuesday. Super excited. Leaving really early. Or actually, I'm leaving late at night on Tuesday. Driving with some friends through the night. And then I get to the con around noon on Wednesday. And that's when I get to see Matt, which I'm really excited about. And then, then the games begin. I'm very excited. Super excited about it. And this is going to be one of the presentations that happens at Gen Con. So I'm glad it took an hour, because even if I had to end up doing this by myself, I could definitely handle it, and it would take the exact amount of time to do that. So Yay, thanks for being like my test subjects for this this topic. This was my outline. It was really small. I did not have a lot there, so I'm glad that I can give a presentation on a short outline like that. I guess I'm actually getting okay at talking to people in public. What? So thank you so much, everybody, for joining me. If you have any follow-up questions, you know where to find me. You can email me. All of my contact information is down in the thing below. Jess is asking, what do you like about writing Salon LARPs versus medium-sized LARPs versus blockbuster ones like NWM? That is a great question. Salon LARPs, they're more intimate by nature because it's a limited space, limited time, limited number of people. It can be hard to get in character for something with that kind of limitation, but since it's such a small group, it also promotes that kind of intimacy. So I like that. I like that that's not a big commitment of time, and I like that a lot of Salon LARPs are very accessible, meaning you can download them for free or very low cost and play them at home or play them at a convention, and people who are able to get to you can play it, basically. There's not usually a lot of costuming requirements for most Salon LARPs. I tend to dress up for them, but you don't have to. She's got a gun, the example that I showed you. You don't even know what scenario you're playing until you go. So I do not expect anybody to show up in costume. I expect them to show up in whatever clothes or cosplay they're wearing and pick the scenario there. So I like that it's more accessible, especially more financially accessible. I prefer blockbuster LARPs. Who can afford to play those every month? Not me. Versus medium-sized LARPs. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many medium-sized LARPs I played. I guess my old Bot for Combat game was medium-sized. I like, with the medium-sized group, how the factions can be divided up into a LARP. So if you have different kingdoms or houses or, whatever it is, different groups, I kind of like that in a medium-sized game of around 50 people. When you get to a larger size, like the first NWM or Dragon Thrones, it's hard to even know everyone in your house, and that's tough because everybody who's in here probably knows this. I love playing loyalty. I love playing a character who is loyal to whatever organization it is she's in, whether that's a house at Wizard College or a house in Dragon Thrones. Loyalty is like the easiest thing for me to play and one of the most rewarding. So, I think if a game is too big, you can lose that a little bit. I imagine it's easier to design safety rules for Salon LARPs. It is, and it's also easier to kind of demonstrate it and walk through it quickly, and as a GM, it's easy to spot problems. So if I'm running a game for 15 people, and somebody's in the corner crying, and I don't know if it's in or out of game, I'm going to see that. If I'm running a game for 150 people, and it's across a whole college campus, myself or my staff might not be able to see that. That's really intimidating to think, but this American Revolution LARP is probably going to be an 80 to 100 person game. So I need to start thinking about that as a reality. It's really hard to think about, but you guys believe in me. You all love me, and I love you back, so I can do it. But yeah, you gotta do different workshops for those rules, and it takes more organization as you scale up. Scaling up is hard for a LARP, for a business. For a LARP that's a business, it's so overwhelming and intimidating. There's just so many different things to do, and to have a team, where you're like, well, I want to pay you, but I haven't kickstarted this game yet. It's really hard. And as a designer, when you tackle a blockbuster LARP, you got to think of all that. And safety rules are part of it. Like, if you're doing workshops and different people are leading your workshops, your safety workshops, they need to be all on the same page. And if you read, let me track down the post I just published. I'm sure you read it. I just published a post on NordicLARP.org all about Dragon Thrones. Here it is. That just came out like today or yesterday. And one criticism I had, as much as I love playing the game, is that us as GMs, we weren't all on the same page about what kind of information we needed to cover at the beginning of the game. So so that was tough, and that's an improvement that I hope to make. So yeah. Hang on one second. I'm going to change the stream because we're not looking at the specific game documentation again. So we're going to go full screen. Tower of the Bard. Oh my god. Okay. So, yeah, I would say that the design safety rules, that's really difficult. And if you have multiple people helping to run the game, they all need to be on the same page. So, great. I'm glad you gave them that feedback too, because I volunteered to kind of help them with that. And something I predict in LARPing, and that I would love to be a part of putting together, it's a very big thing, but something that we need is a repository for code of conduct, safety rules, that type of information in one location that is public domain or Creative Commons, where if you decide, Jess, that you want to run a LARP and you're like, I don't know where to start with safety rules, bam, here's a link. It's everything you need. You can go in and pull out all the information you need and repurpose or use whatever you need. And I think having this Salon, medium-sized, blockbuster LARP scale in mind as we create that type of thing might be really useful. So that's something that I look forward to having. And I keep that in mind as I write these things, because I'd be willing to contribute my ideas about that into that sort of repository. Yeah. One thing we didn't cover a lot that you mentioned is boffer LARPs. They tend to have a lot more rules, just because, first of all, you need more safety rules with how you can actually physically hit people. But they also tend to have more mechanics in the game about how to create resources or how many hit points you have. And those things also come into play when you're talking about safety and code of conduct, because anybody who's played a boffer LARP before has seen the following scenario. We get into a fight. You hit me. I hit you. You hit me 4 times. The other person says, hey, you should have died by now. Why are you still standing? And you need a whole set of rules to deal with that, Yeah, alcohol, that is a really fantastic point as well. And there's another post about that on nordiclarp.org that I'm going to find. Nordiclarp.org. That Sarah Lynn Bowman put together. Alcohol is another important thing. Whether your game allows drugs or alcohol, that should be in the code of conduct. And that's something that can get overlooked, because with the American Revolution LARP, I don't yet know where that game is going to be. So it might be at a venue that allows alcohol. It might be at one that doesn't. My insurance might cost too much to allow alcohol or not. It's definitely something to think about and to consider. And, what do you do if somebody in your game isn't comfortable with alcohol and you allow it? That's a big deal. There's the resource for you, Jess, about alcohol. Generally getting drunk and hitting people with foam sticks sounds like fun, but if somebody takes it over the line, it's a problem, especially when you also are dealing with consent and romantic plots and stuff like that. You don't want to mess too much with it. The reason a lot of fantasy boffer games in my region don't allow alcohol is also because of the location. They're on Girl Scout and Boy Scout camps, and the venue just doesn't allow it. Another thing to think about, if your game isn't 21 plus and you're playing in the United States, then you're going to have alcohol at games where there are people who cannot legally consume alcohol. So you could have 18-year-olds there, and they're not allowed to drink in the United States until they're at least 21. So that's always a toughie too. When we did the informal playtesting, I think at the informal playtesting we had wine, but we were all over 21. But for an actual run of my games, I think it would really depend on the game. And I feel like having a safety officer would be really important in any LARP that allows alcohol. At Dragon Thrones, everyone was great. The one person that appeared drunk was actually role-playing being really drunk, and not actually drunk. So, I don't think anybody got totally wasted or totally, drunk and inappropriate. It is really hard to go into a game and think, okay, so this game is based on Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones has a lot of terrible things in it, like murder and rape. You know, like, it's hard to kind of, like, put yourself into that scenario without knowing what you're expecting. So, you know, in the instance of Dragon Thrones, we were all able to talk to the people who designed and ran the game before we came in, because they did interviews and stuff for the character creation, and they trained the GMs and talked to us. So, obviously myself and many other people felt once they talked to them that it was going to be a safe game, worth giving it a shot. And as you can see about my article, I ended up being really enthusiastic about it by the time I was through. So yeah, but that's a really good point that that needs to be covered. New World Magiscola, and I'll pop their link in again here. They have on their site a code of conduct and the rules, and that kind of like that gives some more. That's a really good example. Like what Magiscola has done is fantastic, and they update according to their venue about things like food and sleep. People need that to feel safe too. If you're organizing a big game, they need to know where they're going to sleep. They need to know what kind of food they have. They need to know if they can pick their roommate. Because, like, who wants to get shoved into a room with a rando? You know, like, you need to know things like, hey, I want to come to this game with my friend Jess. Can she be my roommate? You know, like, that's that kind of stuff. When you get to doing these bigger games, people need to know that, not just because it's a preference, but because they'll feel safe. If I'm going to a new Blockbuster game in an unknown location, and I don't know anyone, and I know that Jess is going with me, and she's the only other person I know, I might not feel safe playing that game unless I know that I can room with her. You know, that I have somebody I know who's nearby that understands me, or that I feel safe near. You know, so Cobalt, New World Magiscola is amazing. Dragon Thrones is also amazing. I highly recommend both games. Kind of a disclosure, I do work with sort of for them, you know, on a freelance basis here and there, you know, doing some marketing, some editing, but I truly believe in those games, and I have been approached by other games that are, you know, definitely less responsible, I'd say, in the LARP community, and I really need money right now, guys. I'm hurting, right? I'm hurting. I'm trying to make a full-time living out of this, and I've told them no, because I'm not going to promote a game that's unsafe. You put safety rules in, or I don't promote your game. That's just how it works. I'm not going to be responsible for someone participating in a game with no combat rules and getting, like, punched in the face. You know, that's just kind of how it is. That kind of destroys my reputation on top of somebody actually getting hurt, so those are my feelings on it. But I do highly recommend both New World Magiscola, very safe game, as well as Dragon Thrones. The other games that I can safely recommend are not in the United States, they're in Europe. And I did get invited very recently to go to Bicoline next week in Canada. It is like a week, I think it's a week-long adventure. And I'm going to pop their link in there too. Let me find it. A lot of people know about this game. And I could not afford to go. I didn't think about going. I got invited to go. Really thought about it, but it's at the same time as Gen Con, and I don't have a passport, so I could not go. But no, I'm not going to Bico. I was invited to participate and sort of cover the event in a media capacity, and I can't go. I know. I want to go. I might go to Bico next year. Even if I had the availability and the money to go, I don't have a passport, and it's next week. And even if you rush that and go to New York and get a passport, it takes 2 weeks. So, yeah. But I'm supposed to go to Canada for my friend Alex's wedding. Alex, are you on stream right now? She might be on stream. Alex is my writing client that I always talk about, who is from Canada, and I'm going to go up and go to her wedding, and I'm really excited. I'm going to cry, just like my character, just like Corinna, I'm going to cry. Oh my gosh, Nick, that would have been great. Yeah, I got invited to go. I could hang out with you. That would have been really funny, though. We could have taken a selfie and just posted it on the chat for the game. People would have been like, what? Would have been hilarious. Yeah, but I'll be up there in October though. I have to like find what I'll have to look up what city it's in, but I will be up there in October, assuming I can get my passport stuff straightened out. Otherwise, they won't let me in. They're gonna think that I'm going there for health insurance and I'll never leave. Which, no, I wouldn't actually do that. But I have no health insurance, so yeah, those are things you think about when you're an American and you're traveling to Canada. But Alex's wedding is in October, so I'm helping to run Emerton, a LARP, a women-only LARP in California, at the very beginning of October 5th, I think. And then after that is Alex's wedding, so that's what I get to do. Yes. So that's it. Vico is not on my schedule this year. I'm still trying to go out to Poland to get to one of their games. I am looking at going to Fairweather Manor, which is basically a Downton Abbey LARP. Very much about like social politics and romance. It's like it's such a me kind of LARP. My friend Raquel is going. Jess, you know Raquel. She's going. So I look forward to hearing some great things from her about it. I think that'll be great. But eventually my LARP travels will take me to Canada because there's so much going on up there. I know a couple people who've played NWM that are from Canada, and I'm like, I want to go check out things in other places. So it'll happen eventually. Pico next year, maybe. That would be fun. That would be very fun. Yes. I'd like to go LARPing in Ireland, too. I would love that. Put me in an actual castle. Oh, my God. That would be amazing. But, that brings up another point about game design. Living here in Philadelphia with this idea for a LARP about the American Revolution. It's a very historical place. You don't have to always make the design and then find a place to put it. You can think about where you can run a game and then design from there. I live near a really fantastic, vibrant, affordable city, and I want to take advantage of that when I do game design. So... and it's easy to get to. There's an airport. So I think about that when I'm designing games, like where can I run this? And I start from there. A game set in the American Revolution. I did not find a venue first because there are so many venues like that around here. However, it's possible. So ask the reenactors. Yeah, one of the venues I'm looking at for a New World Magic School spinoff has been used by the Society for Creative Anachronism, actually. Hi there, thank you for joining. I appreciate you checking the stream out. So one of the venues I have looked at has been used by the SCA, which actually is where my roommate Tina is right now. She's at one of their events, Penzic. But when I inquired about renting the space, my friend Michelle and I went in and did a tour. They were like, oh, it's like SCA but different. And I'm like, yeah, it's like we're in character the whole time, but, similar. And thank you to anybody who's part of the SCA. You guys set a great precedent for them being open-minded to having groups like mine come in. So that was really helpful. That was really helpful and appreciative. I appreciate it a lot because they were definitely more willing to work with me. Yay. But yeah, reenactment groups, that is another great idea. I do know a couple people who do Revolutionary War reenactment, which is a thing I would probably do if I had more time and money. Honestly, I totally would. My only problem is I always want to be like a fighter in LARPs now that I've played one. And yeah, I mean, I don't know, I roleplay different types of characters, but I really get a lot of fulfillment out of roleplaying Minerva, my NWN character, because she's such a badass. She's a wizard cop now. She graduated college and she gets to arrest people. She's so badass. I want to be like her so bad. I play other characters who have a little bit of badassery. Even the Star Trek character I'm playing, like, she's not a total softie. She's got like an iron will when she needs to. So I look forward to exploring that with her. But if I did reenactment, that would be tough. It would be tough. So, all right, everybody. I am going to call it. I'm going to wrap up the stream. I really appreciate it because this was like my test for running this kind of talk at at Gen Con. And I appreciate your attention and your feedback. And I have some more things to add to my outline before I send it over to Aaron. And I'll be running it at Gen Con, and I will try to pop on stream from the con and let you guys know how it goes. So thank you again so much. And I am not going to be doing any planned streams for next week because I'm going to be at Gen Con, but I will pop on and I'll post announcements in Discord and on Facebook so that you guys can follow and check out my streaming. I don't have like a cool phone. I've got an old crappy phone, so I can't really stream while I'm walking around, but I can hop on from the hotel room and be like, this is what happened. And yeah, I'm starting to apply the term AAR, after action report, to everything. I heard this term like 3 or 4 weeks ago from JS, who is one of the players at NWM, and he used it to describe what happened at NWM 7 and Magiscola 7. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool. And then when I joined the Star Trek RP, like, one of the first things that Adam, the guy who runs it, did was do an AAR, and I'm like, this is a thing now. I didn't know about this. I don't know, but okay. I don't know if it's like a military thing, or if you guys know, let me know where that came from. But I'm kind of obsessed with that idea of doing that recap, because for games that don't have structured debriefing where you talk about how it made you feel and if you experience any bleed, which is the transference of feelings from character to player or player to character, you know, that kind of opens that up for discussion. So that is important. Anyways, I'm going to sign off, get some dinner. Don't forget to take care of yourselves, eat, sleep, etc. Because some of you, I sign on to Facebook or Discord, and you were there when I went to sleep, and you're there when I woke up, and I don't know if you slept. So please go to sleep, okay? All right. It's been great hanging out with everyone. Thanks again for your feedback, and I look forward to giving you some updates from the con. See ya.